3 months ago, I stood in a Seattle courtroom watching my world collapse. My husband, Ethan, didn't look at me not once as the judge handed him everything. Our $5 million lakefront home, full custody of our children, and the life I thought we'd built together. When the gavel struck, he leaned in just long enough to whisper, "You'll never see the kids again." Those words hollowed me out. I drove for 3 days, numb and half alive, until I reached my late mother's old house in Vermont, a quiet place that smelled like pine, dust, and memories I wasn't ready to face. I thought grief was my punishment. I thought losing everything was the end. Then, while cleaning the basement, I found a furnace that looked wrong. Behind it was a hidden safe. The code was my birthday. Inside lay a letter that began, "If you're reading this, they finally found you. For 16 years, I believed I had everything. A husband who made people laugh at parties, 2 beautiful kids who painted our kitchen walls with sticky fingerprints, and a glass-walled house that glittered over Lake Washington like a dream we'd built together." People used to tell me, "Nora, you're so lucky." And for a long time, I believed them. Ethan and I met in college. He was charming, magnetic, always the loudest laugh in the room. I was the quiet one, the planner, the person who believed that if you loved someone enough, you could fix anything. But love isn't a cure, it's a mirror. And one day I looked into it and saw nothing looking back. It started small, Ethan working late, his phone always face down, a new cologne that wasn't mine. I asked once, "Is there someone else?" He laughed, kissed my forehead, and said, "You really need to stop overthinking." But the warmth in his eyes was gone. Weeks later, Sophie found a message on his phone from a contact saved as M. It said, "Can't wait to see you again tonight." My heart stopped. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, but even lies have fingerprints, and Ethan's were all over this one. When I confronted him, he didn't even try to deny it. "So what if there's someone else?" he said coldly. "Maybe I got tired of walking on eggshells around you." Eggshells? Around me? I was the one cleaning, caring, building everything we had while he drifted further away. A month later, the papers came. Divorce. His lawyer accused me of being unstable, emotionally erratic, financially reckless. He painted me as a woman on the verge of collapse. Sitting in that courtroom, I realized Ethan wasn't just leaving me, he was erasing me. When the judge ruled in his favor, he didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. And when it was over, he leaned in and whispered the sentence that would echo through my nightmares. "You'll never see the kids again." That night, I sat alone in my car outside the courthouse, watching the rain blur the city lights. My reflection on the glass looked like a ghost. The woman who once had it all was gone. So I packed what was left of my life into a single suitcase and drove east. Away from the house, away from the noise, away from the version of myself that had died in that courtroom. Back to Vermont, back to the only place that still had my mother's scent on the walls. I didn't know it yet, but I wasn't going home to grieve. I was going home to uncover everything she'd been hiding. I used to believe justice was blind, that truth had its own quiet gravity. But the day I walked into that courtroom, I learned truth means nothing when the lies are dressed in tailored suits. Ethan sat across from me, polished and calm, flanked by his attorney, Marianne Cross, a woman with a voice sharp enough to cut glass. My lawyer, Daniel Perez, whispered before it started, "Stay composed, Nora. They're going to make you look like the problem." They didn't even have to try hard. Marianne painted me as a hysterical, overspending wife who couldn't manage her emotions or our finances. She said I'd withdrawn money secretly, sabotaged Ethan's career, even hinted that I'd emotionally endangered the children. Her tone was honeyed poison. Every word seemed rehearsed, every accusation perfectly timed. When she presented evidence bank withdrawals, emails I'd never written, screenshots of messages supposedly from my number, I felt the air drain out of the room. My own lawyer's voice trembled when he said, "Your Honor, these can't be authentic." But Ethan didn't flinch. He kept his eyes on the table, hands folded, wearing the expression of a man who'd been deeply wronged. "Ethan," I said through tears, "you know those aren't real." He finally looked up and whispered, "Maybe you should get help, Nora." That line broke something in me. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was annihilation. When the judge ruled in his favor, granting him full custody and ownership of our $5 million home, my ears rang so loudly I could barely hear the verdict. The gavel struck like a gunshot. Sophie sobbed quietly beside Ethan's sister. Liam refused to look at me. I wanted to scream, to rush to them, to hold them just once more, but the bailiff blocked my way. Outside, the Seattle air was cold and metallic. Ethan followed me down the courthouse steps. His tie was perfect. His smile, effortless. "You'll never see the kids again," he said, leaning close enough for me to smell his cologne. "Not after what you've done." "What I've done," I whispered, voice cracking. "You destroyed me, Ethan." He just shrugged. "You did that yourself." I drove away that day with nothing. No children, no home, no identity. Just a stack of papers that declared, in legal language, that I was no one. For weeks, I stayed in motels, counting the dollars left on my credit card. I stared at my reflection in bathroom mirrors, trying to recognize the woman staring back. I looked like my mother, tired eyes, quiet grief, the kind that eats you from the inside out. Then one morning, I saw her address written on the envelope of my mother's old will, Maple Hollow, Vermont. I don't remember deciding to drive there. I just remember the feeling that maybe, in that small house tucked in the woods, I'd find the version of myself Ethan hadn't destroyed yet. It took 3 days to reach Vermont. By the time I arrived, the snow was falling. Mom's house stood silent beneath the trees, its windows glowing faintly with the reflection of my headlights. It was supposed to be a refuge, a place to heal, but instead, it became the door to a secret that had been waiting for me my whole life. The first night in Vermont, I couldn't sleep. The house creaked with every gust of wind, as if it remembered me or was warning me. My mother's scent still lingered faintly in the air. Lavender soap, old books, and coffee. It hit me like a ghost hugging too tight. I told myself I came here to rest, but rest was impossible when every corner whispered her name. The next morning, I started cleaning the basement. It was how Mom coped whenever life fell apart. She cleaned, sorted, made order out of chaos. I guess I learned that from her. The air downstairs was cold and heavy with dust. Shelves of labeled boxes lined the walls. Nora's school projects, Christmas 2006, tax receipts. Each one was a little time capsule. As I reached for an old box of family photos, my foot caught on something uneven. The furnace. It looked wrong. It wasn't flush against the wall like it used to be. I crouched down and ran my fingers along the floor. Scratches, thin grooves in the concrete, fresh enough to catch dust differently. For a moment, I just stared, heart thudding in my ears. "Mom, what were you doing down here?" I whispered. I tried to dismiss it, but curiosity is a dangerous thing, especially when you've lost everything else. I turned off the gas valve, grabbed a wrench from her old toolbox, and started loosening the bolts. The furnace didn't move easily. It groaned like it was alive, resisting me. By the time I pushed it a few inches, sweat had soaked through my sweatshirt. That's when I saw a faint outline of metal in the wall. A small, square door, gray and faded, about the size of a shoebox, a safe. For a second, I thought it was a joke, some relic left by the previous owner. But Mom had lived here for 30 years. This was her secret. I brushed the dust away and traced my fingers over the dial. No label, no numbers worn from use, just cold metal. My mind raced. What would Mom have hidden? Jewelry? Cash? Or something worse? Then I remembered something, a memory that didn't make sense until now. Every birthday, Mom would call me at exactly 6:42 a.m. She said it was the moment I was born. She never missed it, not once. I closed my eyes, took a breath, and turned the dial. Right 06, left 42. Right 89. The year I was born. Click. The sound was so soft I almost missed it. My pulse hammered in my throat as I slowly pulled the door open. Inside were bundles of $100 bills wrapped in old rubber bands, a leather folder, several driver's licenses, all with Mom's picture, but different names. Eleanor Ross, Mary Jensen, Clara Whitman. And at the bottom, a sealed envelope, my name written across it in her delicate handwriting. To Nora, my heart, my truth. My hands trembled as I tore it open. The first line made my knees give out. If you're reading this, they finally found you, and I'm no longer here to protect you. The basement suddenly felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. I read the next line, and everything I thought I knew about my life shattered like the glass of that Seattle house I once called home. The paper trembled in my hands. My mother's handwriting, neat, precise, written with the same blue ink she used for grocery lists, now looked like a message from another world. If you're reading this, they finally found you, and I'm no longer here to protect you. I read it once, then again, then again. Each word sank deeper, heavier, like stones pulling me under. The letter continued. Your real last name isn't Wallace, it's Romanelli. Your father, Anthony Romanelli, was murdered by the Vescari crime family in Chicago, 1991. I was there. I was supposed to die with him, but I survived and I ran. I ran with you. I stopped breathing. My father hadn't died in an accident, like she'd always said. He'd been murdered. The FBI helped us disappear. They gave us new names, new papers. I became Claire Ross. You became Nora. We entered witness protection and moved to Vermont under federal supervision. You were 4. My hands went cold. Witness protection? My mother? My entire childhood had been a cover story? I read on, desperate, horrified. They promised we'd be safe if we never made contact with anyone from our old life. But safety doesn't last forever. The Vescari family never forgets. A few years ago, I began hearing things again, questions being asked, people watching. They're looking for us, Nora. I pressed the page against my chest, my heart hammering. The house felt alive, like the walls were listening. There's more. Someone close to you has been helping them find us. I believe it's your husband. The words blurred. I had to steady myself against the wall. Ethan Wallace. That's not his real name either. I found records linking him to Vescari Holdings, a shell company used for money laundering. I don't know if he's working for them willingly or if they've trapped him somehow. But Nora, he is part of this. Your marriage, your business, your fall, it wasn't an accident. Tears stung my eyes. I whispered aloud, No, no, Mom, that can't be true. I wanted to tear the letter apart, to reject every line, but another page slid out, folded neatly. In the bottom of this safe, there's a flash drive labeled Vermont Project. It contains the documents I gathered before I got sick, names, transactions, photos. If you're in danger, call this number. Agent Theodore Vance, U.S. Marshals Service. He was assigned to protect us years ago. Tell him who you are. Tell him I said it's time. At the very bottom, one last line written shakily, the ink slightly smudged as if she'd cried while writing it. You are stronger than you know, my girl. What destroyed me doesn't have to destroy you. Finish what I started. I sat on the cold basement floor, surrounded by ghosts, my mother, my father, the life I thought I'd had. For the first time in months, my tears weren't for Ethan, or the house, or even my children. They were for the woman who'd carried a secret so heavy she'd buried it behind a furnace. The air felt thinner. My pulse wouldn't slow down. I reached back into the safe, pulled out the small black flash drive, and held it up to the light. On one side, a faint label written in my mother's careful handwriting, Vermont Project. Whatever truth was on this drive, it was going to destroy everything again. But this time, I was ready to face it. I didn't move for a long time. The letter lay open beside me, its edges fluttering in the faint draft from the basement vent. The words looped in my head like a broken record. Your husband is working with them. No, it couldn't be true. Ethan wasn't a saint, but he wasn't a criminal. He couldn't be. I stumbled upstairs, clutching the flash drive like it was burning my skin. My hands were trembling so badly that I nearly dropped my laptop. When the screen lit up, I hesitated, part of me still hoping it was a misunderstanding. Some paranoid fantasy my mother had written while she was sick. But the folder opened easily. Inside were hundreds of documents, scanned FBI reports, transaction logs, photographs, and then there it was. A photo of Ethan, sitting in a Seattle restaurant with a man identified in the file as Marco Vescari. The timestamp read 2019. I gasped so loudly it echoed. My stomach clenched. I thought I might vomit. I scrolled further wire transfers from Viscari Holdings to Ethan's company, Wallace Design Partners. 6 transactions, totaling nearly $450,000. Mom hadn't been paranoid. She'd been right. The betrayal hit me harder than the divorce ever could. I remembered all the nights he'd stayed late, at work, the mysterious calls, the strange calmness during our trial. It wasn't exhaustion, it was calculation. He'd been helping them. I opened the next file, an FBI summary from 1991. Romanelli homicide, witness relocation under Witsec, Claire Ross, alias. My mother's handwriting filled the margins with notes. One line circled in red ink. They always come for the next generation. My chest tightened. My children. If Ethan was working for them, what had he told them? Where were Sophie and Liam now? I grabbed my phone and dialed his number with shaking fingers. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Finally, a message came through. Ethan, stop contacting me. You're unstable. Get help. I almost screamed. You bastard! I shouted into the empty house, slamming my hand against the wall. My voice cracked, bouncing off the wooden beams. That's when I remembered the final line of my mother's letter. If you're in danger, call Agent Theodore Vance. I looked at the number scrawled in her handwriting. My thumb hovered over the keypad. My breath came shallow and fast. Do it, Nora, I whispered to myself. What else do you have to lose? I pressed call. The line rang once, twice. Then a man's voice, deep and steady. Vance speaking. My throat tightened. Agent Vance. My name is Nora Wallace. Or I guess, I swallowed hard. Nora Romanelli. My mother was Claire Ross. She told me to call you. There was silence for several seconds. Then, in a low voice, he said, Where are you right now, ma'am? Vermont. At her old house. Stay there. Lock the doors. Don't talk to anyone. We've been waiting for this call. My knees nearly gave out. You knew about me? We've been monitoring activity around that property for months. We believe the Viscari network reactivated after 30 years. You're not safe, Mrs. Wallace. The way he said it, calm, deliberate, sent a chill down my spine. I'll be there in 4 hours. Do not open that door for anyone but me. The call ended. For the first time since my life had fallen apart, someone else knew the truth and believed me. But that realization came with another. If the marshals had been watching this house, then the people looking for me probably had been, too. I checked the window. The forest outside was dark, quiet, too quiet. A shiver ran down my arms. I shut off the lights, locked every door, and sat at the kitchen table with my mother's letter and the flash drive laid out in front of me. My whole life, every lie, every betrayal, every heartbreak had led to this night. And before the sun rose over the Vermont woods, the truth my mother died protecting would finally come knocking. By the time the black SUVs pulled into the driveway, dawn was just breaking over the Vermont hills. The sky glowed pale orange through the kitchen window, but my hands were still trembling from the night. 3 men stepped out, all wearing dark jackets marked U.S. Marshals. The one in front, tall with silver hair and a voice that could calm a storm, extended his hand. Mrs. Wallace? I'm Agent Theodore Vance. Your mother spoke about you often. My breath caught. You knew her? Claire Ross, he nodded. One of the bravest witnesses I ever protected. Hearing her name from a stranger's lips nearly broke me. They followed me down to the basement. Vance's team photographed everything: the safe, the money, the IDs, the letter. Every so often, one of the agents exchanged glances that said more than words could. She was meticulous, Vance murmured. Even 30 years later, she was still protecting you. I asked the question that had been burning in me since the night before. Ethan, my husband, was she right about him? Vance looked at me for a long time, as if weighing how much truth I could handle. Then, he laid a folder on the table. Inside were surveillance photos: Ethan shaking hands with Marco Viscari, the same man from the drive. Another image showed wire transfers, shell companies, an entire paper trail. He was compromised, Vance said quietly. The Vescari family approached him through real estate investors 4 years ago. At first, it was small networking, harmless business meetings. Then came the loans, the deals, the pressure. He became their tool before he even realized it. My throat tightened. So the divorce, the court case, all of it? Engineered. Vance finished. They needed to bankrupt you, isolate you, make you flee here. This house wasn't random, Nora. It's what they were really after. They thought your mother left evidence behind from the original trial testimony that could destroy them. I felt dizzy. She did leave evidence, it's all here. And now, it's ours, Vance said. Your mother's work might be the key to ending the Vescari syndicate for good. The agents worked for hours cataloging the documents. Every once in a while, Vance would glance at me with a look that was both protective and deeply sad. The look of someone who'd carried too many secrets for too long. Before he left that night, he turned to me. Nora, I need you to understand something. You're not just a victim here. You're a witness. And like your mother, you're the last living thread that connects us to this case. What happens now? I asked, my voice barely steady. Now, he said. We finish what she started. He handed me a new phone, preloaded with encrypted contacts. We'll keep you under federal protection. But if they make a move, and they will, we'll be ready. After they left, the house felt impossibly quiet again. The basement was sealed with evidence tape. My mother's secret was no longer mine alone. I sat on the porch, watching snowflakes drift through the morning light, and whispered to the woods. You did it, Mom. You found a way to keep me safe, even now. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. The Vescari family had waited 3 decades for revenge, and they weren't about to stop now. It started 2 nights later. I was sitting by the window, lights off, when a car I didn't recognize slowed in front of the house. Headlights cut through the trees, then disappeared. My stomach dropped. I called Agent Vance immediately. They're here, aren't they? I whispered. Stay inside, he said firmly. We've got eyes on them. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every sound, the creak of a floorboard, the rustle of branches made my pulse spike. I'd lost everything already, but now I realized they still thought I had more to lose. The next morning, the marshals returned with a plan. Vance explained calmly, like this was routine procedure, but I could see the tension in his jaw. We're going to make contact, he said. We need confirmation from Ethan on record. My chest tightened. You mean, talk to him? A recorded call. He's our link to the Vescari network. They set up the recording equipment right there on my mother's kitchen table. My phone was patched through a secure line. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it when they nodded for me to start dialing. The line rang 3 times. Then, Nora. His voice was low, cautious. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Ethan, why? My voice cracked. Why did you do this to us? You don't understand, he said quickly. They told me you'd be safe if I cooperated. Safe? I spat. You let them destroy me. You let them take our kids. They promised they wouldn't hurt the children. His voice faltered. If I did what they asked. And what did they ask, Ethan? Silence. Then a long breath. To get you back to Vermont. To make you desperate. They said your mother had something hidden there. Evidence from the old case. Tears blurred my vision. I whispered. You used me. I was trying to protect you. He shouted suddenly. You think I wanted this? I wanted out. But once they have you, Nora, you don't get out. You just do what they tell you until someone stops breathing. Behind me, I heard one of the agents mutter, We got it. The red light on the recorder blinked steady. Vance nodded, signaling me to keep him talking. Where are they now, Ethan? I asked. I don't know, he said hoarsely. They said they'd be in Portland. If I talked, if I told anyone, they'd take the kids next. The line went dead. Within minutes, Vance was on the radio. Orders flew like lightning. Track the signal. Now. By nightfall, they had him. Federal agents arrested Ethan and 3 men affiliated with the Vescari organization at a Portland hotel. Inside their rooms, they found burner phones, surveillance notes, and a printed photo of me taken just days earlier through my living room window. When Vance called to tell me, I didn't know whether to cry or collapse. He's cooperating, Vance said gently. It turns out your husband was as much a victim as you were. They threatened your children, used him to get to your mother's evidence. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I wanted to hate Ethan. I wanted to scream. But the truth was crueler than hate, it was pity. 2 days later, the marshals arranged for me to call Sophie and Liam. Their voices were small, afraid, but when Sophie whispered, "Mom, are you really okay?" I finally let myself cry. "I'm okay, sweetheart," I said softly. "And we're going to be together again soon. I promise." The investigation moved fast after that. The files from Mom's safe, her Vermont project, gave the FBI the leverage they needed. Bank trails, names, testimony, all pointing back to the same crime family that had destroyed her life 3 decades earlier. For the first time in years, justice didn't feel like a fantasy. It felt like something real, something breathing. The night before the hearing, Vance stopped by one last time. "You did good, Nora," he said, resting a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Your mother would be proud." I smiled weakly. She already saved me twice. The least I can do is make sure her story ends right. He nodded. "Then tomorrow, we finish this." As he left, I looked out at the snow falling on the old maple trees, the same ones I used to climb as a kid. For the first time, the silence of Vermont didn't scare me. It felt like peace, the kind my mother had fought her whole life to give me. 6 months later, the Vermont snow had melted into soft, green spring. The marshals' cars were gone, the house no longer surrounded by quiet men with earpieces, and for the first time in years, I could open the windows without fear. Ethan pled guilty to federal racketeering and obstruction charges. His testimony helped dismantle half of the Viscari network that had survived in silence for decades. When the sentence was read, 15 years, with parole after 8, I didn't feel triumph. I felt something heavier, like finally putting down a stone I'd been carrying too long. He wrote me once from prison. The envelope was short, the handwriting shaky. "Tell the kids I tried to protect them the only way I knew how. I'm sorry for everything." I never replied. Some words deserve to stay unanswered. Sophie and Liam live with me now in Maine, in a small coastal town where the air smells of salt and pine instead of lies. They're healing in ways I can't quite describe. Sophie's laughter sounds real again. Liam paints oceans, lighthouses, stormy skies. I see their pain in the colors, but I see their strength too. Sometimes, when I tuck them in, Sophie asks, "Was Grandma really a hero?" And I tell her the truth. She was the kind of hero who never wanted anyone to know she was one. The federal trial against the remaining members of the Viscari family starts this fall. I'll be there as a witness, as a survivor, as the daughter my mother raised to never back down. Agent Vance calls every week to prepare me, but sometimes we just talk. He says justice takes time. I tell him that healing does too. One evening, I went back to Vermont to pack the last of Mom's things. The basement was empty now, the furnace pushed back, the wall repaired, the safe long removed. But when I stood in that quiet space, I could almost feel her presence. I lit a candle on the workbench and whispered, "It's done, Mom. You can rest now." The flame flickered gently, then steadied as if she'd heard me. As I locked the door for the last time, I realized something she'd always known. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you doesn't destroy you, it reveals you. I'd lost everything once, my home, my marriage, my name. But in the wreckage, I'd found something stronger. The truth, my courage, and the bloodline of a woman who refused to die afraid. Now, when the sun rises over the Maine coast, I watch the light pour through the windows and whisper to the wind, "We made it, Mom. We're free."